What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Miltrick Media. I am here with New York City comedian Jon Elias. Jon, how's it going?
It's going great, man. It's good. It's good to be here. It's good to be out and about finally, for a change. So,
Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Yeah, being out and about, I miss it. And I miss that New York City winter. Like I was saying before we started, nothing like a New York City winter. It keeps you on your feet, but like that, like the gray in the air, the snow, the flurries, it's just like it has a grit to it, but it still makes me feel like just, up and about. You know what I mean?
it's that cold, yeah. That cold that just bites you,
It's like a caffeinated winter. I feel like New York City,
As are most New Yorkers, right? Just totally caffeinated,
Oh, yeah.
excited, ready to go.
I had a quick little coffee before I came. You had to. It's Monday night. You gotta stay on your feet.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So let's talk about your beginnings as a comedian. When did you first start pursuing comedy?
Comedy, I guess unofficially was around 2000, I want to say 7 or so. I started with improv comedy at my high school. We had this like little improv team that kind of went around. We put on 2 shows a year. So I started around that. And after I graduated high school, I wanted to continue with improv, but then I happened to venture off to a school in Philadelphia. It was an all science based school. And I did that for a semester. And while I was there looking for that kind of improv vibe, when you're dealing with all science people, it's, not exactly the type of people who want to venture into improv comedy. So I had to pivot a little bit while I was down there, and I just decided, start, writing stand-up and kind of get into that because it's a little more of a solo sport comparatively.
Yeah. So that's cool. So that school you went to in Philadelphia, so you're doing improv, that's how you first started, so with improv. So were you also doing a lot of stuff in the Philadelphia comedy scene?
When I started doing stand-up, there was one comedy club that I was aware of at the time because I didn't really do much research, as you do early on.
Yeah.
So it was Helium Comedy Club down there, and I was just kind of hitting up open mics because I was only there for a semester. And when I came back to go to school a little more locally in Jersey, I was kind of trying to hit up more clubs, more mics, kind of get more involved in the scene of stand-up because improv wasn't necessarily something that was going around too much, once again, to my knowledge at the time. So I did have a little group that we kind of worked together. We did a couple fundraiser shows and stuff like that, but I was trying to focus a little more into that stand-up bit.
Yeah, no, I've heard of Helium. Helium they have numerous clubs across the country, right? It's not just in one individual location?
Yeah, they have a bunch of clubs over there, and they had an open mic once, twice a week, if anything. And yeah, that was the first time I actually ever did stand-up was at that club.
At the Helium in Philly?
Yeah, that got real interesting when roommates, a couple frat kids, whatever, they came out to come watch an open mic, which, to be honest, you don't really even hear that there's an audience to begin with. So it was an interesting first experience.
How old are you when your first stand-up comedy performance? How old were you?
I think I was 17. Yeah, 17.
That's awesome. Were you feeling jitters? Were you ready to go, prepared? And you said you had some friends that came out. What was that performance and that night like? What was going through your head?
So then they gave newcomers to the mic 3 minutes. And I wrote those 3 minutes in about 3 days because it was one of those things where I watched for Robin Williams live on Broadway. I happened to just watch it in 2007 one day, and 3 days later I was like, I really want to try this, right? So I had 3 days to write these 3 minutes, which in the comedy world is difficult to do. It's not easy to even just write 3 minutes. So I wrote it and I went, gave it a shot. And, like all first timers, it was like, yeah, you got some laughs here and there, but you weren't making people belly laugh across the room.
Yeah, but that's awesome though. It sounded like a really cool experience. So what you just said, when it comes to writing material, when it comes to music, sometimes you see and you hear a lot of artists, whether it be singers, guitarists, like in the rock genre, hip hop or pop. I've heard of a lot of artists, they freestyle in the booth. They come up with lyrics or they produce beats in like a single session, which could be in a few hours. But then like you said, and I've heard this from other writers and comedians as well, comedy sometimes takes longer. It's not as much freestyle. Is that true? Like how come? Yeah, so when it comes to creating material, does creating comedic material sometimes take longer?
For me, it does. I could say that. Some people like to go up there and they like to, have a premise and just kind of riff with it back and forth, maybe even get into the audience a little bit. With me, we were talking before, I like to take a little more of that methodical approach, and I like to make sure, because to me, every word matters, right? You don't want to repeat the same thing. You don't want to repeat the same words over and over again unless you're trying to create a pattern and then break a pattern. There's just different ways of writing.
Yeah.
Personally, it takes me a little while to get through a longer joke. My jokes are usually anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes a piece, right? So I'll have this premise and then I'll try to build and build and build until I finally get this thing. And then there's also workshopping it, right? Going to those open mics like the table, hosted by Donnie.
Yeah.
And, you just you keep getting the reps in. And then every time I perform a joke, to me, it always feels unfinished. Regardless of how the joke does, it feels unfinished. And I always feel like I could do a little more to it, right? Take out this, add this. So honestly, a joke could take me anywhere from a day to write to months and months and months before I'm happy performing it at a show as opposed to an open mic.
Yeah. When you're creating jokes and when you're performing them, let's say you said when you workshop them, when do you feel that it's time to retire a joke? Do you keep things for years? Like how do you say when? Like how does a comedian figure that out?
To be honest, when people stop laughing, right? When audiences just don't care anymore about like that statement, there's things that just don't stay relevant anymore. On top of that, if you're performing in the same place all the time and then you start to notice there's regulars, you can't use the same joke. So for me, what I like to do is, if I'm in a place that's new and I'm starting to kind of get myself going within that place, I'll try what I like to call my heavy hitter jokes, like jokes that are, tried and true and they work, right? But if I go to perform in that same place, maybe the week after, I'm not going to want to do the same jokes just in case there's those 1 or 2 audience members who were there the previous week. And then you just go. But until people stop laughing, I mean, I don't see the point in retiring a joke or unless it's not relevant anymore, depending what it is.
Have you ever been stuck on a bit or a joke, something that took you longer than usual to write? And if so, how did you finally see the light at the end of the tunnel and complete that joke?
Honestly, it's that happens to me very frequently, but I do have a writing partner, Joe Naimoli. You had him on. We will go through jokes and then, to be honest, we'll put them on the shelf, right? And then something will happen one day where it's like, oh, you know what? That situation can fit well in this joke. And then now the joke comes back to life and then it almost reinvigorates you to write it again.
That's cool. So you have a lot of topics or materials in your back pocket in a way, ready to go in an instant.
Yeah. If you look at my phone and my notepad, there's over like 200 lines of just things that could, or I once thought could be something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same for you with lyrics and stuff, right?
Oh, 100%. And even like when I'm trying to come up with any ideas with, let's say, content, or if I'm trying to think of comedic content or content in general, music, it's a mess. I need to go back, sift through it. I have numerous voice memo recordings where I forgot to put titles, so I need to have like a monthly summary in a way. Like I need to go back. It's like a retreat. Like I have to go back. New recording 1168. All right, give it a random title like Lemon. Like, I should have. I'm realizing I have to name it on the spot.
And then you get you get those. To be honest, you get some of those ideas in an instant. And to be honest, for me, sometimes at the most inconvenient time, I'll be on a highway. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'll try to get it on voice recording so then I can put it in the notepad. Because to me, if it's not written out, it doesn't exist, even if it's in a voice recording.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I need to get it in that instant. I agree. There's been times when I'm at work in the middle of my shift and I'll go to the bathroom, and I went to the bathroom like twice in an hour just to go so I could record an idea for a song or anything. And like, where are you going? I'm like, I need to go to the bathroom. Yeah, but I'm trying to get that idea because I can't be like, and I'm not going to take out my phone, do a voice memo in the middle of all this stuff going on. But that's happened to me. I got to dip out real quick.
Just blame the bad food the night before.
Blame the bad food or blame the coffee I had on my lunch break. Yeah.
That's it.
But that's cool. You have a writing partner. You talked about your writing partner, Joe Naimoli. So do you feel, as your career has evolved, is it easier for you to write material with a partner and with other collaborators, or do you write better alone?
I definitely come up with a premise better alone because it's based off my experience, right? I'm more of a storytelling comic, so it's more of based off my experiences. So without me actually going out and doing things and living life a little, it's that's where the idea comes. And then once I have my premise, my punch that I want to get, where I want to go with the joke, then we kind of go into the lab, if you will, right? And kind of try to figure it out.
It's like cooking up a beat in the lab, like they say we're producing. Yeah,
exactly.
That's cool.
And then we usually will come out and it's the same attempt every time. We always try to like have a certain length of a joke, right? Usually, because a lot of spots come in, 5, 8, 10, 15, right? Minutes worth of jokes. So for me, I like to keep them somewhat timed so that I know going into a set, they're like, all right, you got 15 minutes. And then that day, I'll be like, okay, I could pull out this joke and this joke, that's 15. We could do that. So trying to kind of navigate how long I want something to go and everything like that. That's on you. The point of having a partner and what me and Joe do is we kind of just bounce. We just bounce an idea off each other. Oh, could this be funny? Could this not be funny? And then it's trying to keep each other from going too far even. So it's a nice way to keep yourself grounded.
No, for sure. And back to when you said you started with improv. So a group that, I don't know if this was SNL group or just like, it was like an improv trope. The Groundlings, was that an improv group?
Yeah, they were an improv group. If I'm not mistaken, they were an improv group. I forgot what they came out of. Might have been Second City. I don't know, something like that.
And is that when you started with improvisation? So you said, were you in a group when you started that back then, or you were doing just solo improvisation?
So my high school had it started to dip after a little bit, but we had like a 20-person cast where we would just do like an hour and a half, 2-hour show. And people would just jump on, do games. It was more of like that Whose Line Is It Anyway short form type of improv comedy. After I graduated high school, me and 3 of my best friends from high school decided, well, why don't we just continue doing it?
Yeah.
So we kept up with kind of, once again, that short form vibe. And from there, we wanted to dip into long form. Because it is a very different thing. We wanted to dip into long form. Timing was an issue, so I just decided to go take some classes at the People's Improv Theater, kind of networking there a little bit, hanging out with them, talking with the people over there, nice. And doing some, you have your class graduation show, a couple shows over there.
That's cool.
So it was fun. It was definitely fun. Improv to me was always fun. To me, there was never a point where it just wasn't, whereas sometimes stand-up can feel like it's a little bit of because you hit a lull a lot of times, right? Or at least for me, I hit a lull. And then you're just like, maybe I'll go do improv instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
at the table open mic, you did a bit recently last night. Part of your set, it was hilarious. The kid bit, you talked about that. When did you come up with that bit?
Those were all true stories, right? Literally. And just looking back at those situations, like for example, the story of me going to Hawaii, getting lost, getting found by a prostitute. Once again, that true story really happened. And in my life, I'm like, that's comedy, right?
And real experiences, yeah.
The thing with the hermit crab, also very true. I took care of this thing for 6 years, go to set it free. Now something happens and it, dies.
Yeah.
So, but it's that's always been stuff that I knew, always stuff that I was like, okay, maybe I'll write it into a joke. But, going to the mic, I was very iffy on going up to begin with. I just didn't I didn't have anything new that I had written for, to try out workshop. But I was like, let me go up there, throw 5 minutes up and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it was.
That's cool. And recently you performed at the Gotham Comedy Club in Manhattan.
Yes.
Let's talk about that performance. Yeah, that looked really cool.
That was
it a festival, right?
It was the Arab American Comedy Festival. And it was produced by Maysoon Zaid and Dean Abdullah. They did this show. They've been doing this, I think, 18 years now. This is what it was. And to be honest, I kind of took a shot in the dark. It was just because, I'm Egyptian, Lebanese, and I was like, you know what? I've never performed with literally an entire setup of, other people of Middle Eastern descent. And so I just emailed them, shot in the dark, didn't even know they were accepting submissions. And then Dean asked me, he's like, you want to do this? So I was like, yeah, sure. It's at Gotham. Why wouldn't I want to do it,
Yeah.
Like 2 days before, I find out that they got on Ramy Youssef. He's the creator of the show Ramy on Hulu. They won Golden Globes, like 2 Golden Globes or something like that. So then they let out the lineup, and Ramy is going right in the middle of the show right before me, right?
Oh, wow.
So I'm thinking to myself, wow, I have officially become the piss break comic. You know what I mean? Because these people are coming to see Ramy. And then I'm going to go up and they're going to be like, yeah, who cares about this guy? You know what I mean? Now we go. So I'm sitting there in the wings waiting to go up. And I'm visibly, I guess there were nerves there for the first time in a while. There were just nerves there because I'm like, all right, how am I going to follow this guy? You know what I mean? And as he's coming off stage, he taps me. He's like, just have fun, man. Because I guess he could just see what was going on. And I'm like, oh, guess I made an impression there, So I went up on stage and it was a completely sold out crowd, like over 200 seats sold. Just packed into Gotham. And the show actually just, it's rare that I try to pat myself on the back, but the show went really well. The
awesome.
Audience was laughing. They had such a great time to be honest, with all the comedians, but it was a really good feeling to go up after someone like that who literally killed it, right? Just slayed the whole room, standing ovation at the end. So I'm going up there. And I just made reference to it. It's like, hey, well, how do you follow him, right? How do you follow a Golden Globe winner followed by, a comedian who does stand up in Jersey sometimes.
You
know
brought
what I
some
mean?
levity to it, though. That was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it was, but overall, it was a great show. It's one of those things where you don't necessarily beat a good show high, like a post show high. You know what I mean? When a show goes really well like that, you kind of ride that out for a little bit. It was a good feeling.
That must have been exhilarating, especially after. Did you feel a weight was lifted off your shoulders once that set concluded?
Honestly, I felt that way after the first laugh. Once you get for me, that's always what it is. Once the first laugh happens and I feel like, okay, now the audience is comfortable, because my material stays relatively clean. I don't try to, cross any lines or anything like that. So once you get that first laugh, I'm like, all right, they're interested and they're at least somewhat listening, right?
Yeah.
You get past that first laugh and then the show just from there went wild. But like I said, there was a ton of great comedians on that show. And yeah, they do it all the time. So if anyone checks it out, feel free. You're going to have a good time.
That's awesome. I'm not as well aware of, let's say, the different forms of comedy as, let's say, I know about the different forms of music because I'm a musician and producer. You have different music genres. You have hip hop, pop, rock. When it comes to comedy and comedic material, what are the different genres of comedy? Like, I only know of, like, you have clean and like blue comedy, right? Like, what are the different genres of comedic material?
You have clean, you have blue. I mean, you have just general roasters. You have those improv crowd workers. You have those people who do like the, those zinger one-liner kind of deals. Every once in a while, you get an impressionist, right? Mm-hmm. Prop comics, magician comics. Honestly, there's people who do Christian comedy out there. If you look at some of the agencies, they'll advertise that. Like we have, Christian comics, religious-based comics, stuff like that. In general, it's hard to say, and I feel like it's the same way with music. It's hard to, there's a genre, but there's also, the individual, the group, right? Whoever's doing it, everyone's going to make their own style no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter how they want to do it.
Yeah. Do you like doing impressions as well? Is that part of your sets usually?
No, that's not something I necessarily go into. I usually just like to either do story-based comedy based on, just my life, other people's lives, observations I've made. I just try to make it as relatable as possible. Some people do really well with the impressions. I just, can I do some? Yeah. Are they great? No. So if I'm not great at it, I'm not going to put it out there in a situation where people are going to be like, the hell's this guy doing? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why is he attempting this, random impression?
Yeah. Who are your biggest comedic influences? When you were growing up, which comedians did you really look up to?
Man, that's a good question. Robin Williams, like by far, is my number one on that, because literally I watched his stand-up 3 days later. I went and did my own first open mic. You know what I mean? And I followed his career through acting, stand-up, and everything like that. And it was just something that that really just drove me in the direction of stand-up. Other than him, honestly, I'd like to say the whole cast of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Wayne Brady, Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockery. You have Brad Sherwood, Chip, all the guys from the beginning era of Whose Line, because to me it was always fascinating to just let's do it on the spot. Let's just go, right?
Yeah. I love improv too. Like improv seems natural to me, and I love it. It's a rush. But I didn't mean to cut you off. No, that's fine. More influences.
I'll say this: my first stand-up show that I ever went to go see. I was way too young to see this show. I don't know. I was in AC with my parents, and my brother was with us, and I think I was like 11 or 12. And Don Rickles happened to be performing.
Wow, you saw Rickles.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it was like, I am clearly too young to be in this show. He's got jokes going over my head or whatever. But I remember just sitting there watching and thinking to myself, I'm like, all of these people are here to watch this guy talk.
It's mind blowing, right?
Yeah, and that was my first thing. First time I said to myself, like, you know what, I might want to try it.
Yeah. That's how I felt with music too. When I was little, my parents took me to a lot of concerts from bands I love. I remember seeing the Rolling Stones and the Who in 2006. I was like 8 going on 9 within a week. I saw them at Giant Stadium, the Stones, and I saw the Who at Continental Airlines Arena, I believe. No, Madison Square Garden. And I was little, and I was seeing like these people, they're in their 60s, and the Stones especially, they're selling out a stadium in their 60s, and people are losing their minds. This was back in 06, so like people were just dancing. There was not really a lot of phones, but people were going crazy. And that was the bug that bit me from what I remember. It's like, I may want to do this or some kind of career like this. It looks so liberating. People look, they're going crazy. It's like, what, you get to do this? That's crazy.
That was your first concert you went to? Because that'd be like a wild
That was one of my first. It wasn't my first. My first may have been like Bruce Springsteen, the Rising Tour in 2002. But that was like one of the biggest I went to at that point. Like, yeah, seeing the Stones, because my parents went to a lot of concerts when I was little, and that was a huge impression on me. Yeah, yeah, it was wild. And Don Rickles, I remember the first time I saw Rickles was I didn't know he was a comedian. I saw him, he was in Casino, the movie Casino. But then later on, like I seen clips on YouTube and TikTok and even IG Reels that he was a comedian. I saw recently he performed at Reagan's inauguration, and I saw numerous sets from the 80s and 90s. I didn't even know. Yeah, he was hilarious. I didn't even know he was a comedian at first. Same thing with Robin Williams. I knew him from acting at first. I think first time I saw him was Mrs. Doubtfire when I was little.
Yeah, great, fantastic movie.
I didn't even know he was a comedian till after,
It was, I don't know if you ever watched a documentary on him, right? That happened after he passed away.
Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah.
They made a documentary on him, and they were kind of talking about him and kind of how he, went through acting, how he handled acting, how he handled stand-up. And the one thing that always impressed me was, I forgot who it was. I think it was his manager or someone was talking about it. But they were like, he would write about a half hour of material, but then do an hour and a half on stage, like while he was going around on tour, which to me was always just something super impressive, literally mixing that stand-up improv kind of duo, but obviously he took it to a like above and beyond kind of level.
Yeah. Do you like doing crowd work?
I did for a little bit, and then I stopped when the nature of comedy got a little dicey, right? When people, getting offended a little more easily. Not that I would go at them or anything like that, but you never know what's going on in someone's life. So I steered away from it. Now I find myself doing it, but almost as if I'm in their corner, like I'm their cheerleader, right? Even if someone's heckling, it's like, yeah, man, good for you. You know what I mean? You're doing a great job. Keep it going.
Yeah, that's cool though. That's cool.
But I don't really do crowd work too much. I might riff with someone for a little bit, I do like the engagement. I'm not saying I don't, because once again, coming from an improv background, that's all audience engagement, right? You get a lot from the audience. So I don't mind having a conversation with someone while I'm on stage, putting a funny twist to it, but I don't necessarily make that the bulk of a set, right? Because at the end of the day, you want people to leave knowing that, we saw a good show. You want to give them the best you can, right? And I learned that from, honestly, during quarantine, a lot of Zoom shows, and I was a part of this festival with Flappers Comedy Club in California. And the one thing that they always said, they're like, just do your best stuff. Just always do your best stuff. Now, for me to always do my best stuff, then, that means I just got to keep writing better. And that's kind of how I looked at it. Mm-hmm. But you're right. The audience, they deserve the show they paid for, right? They deserve a show. Even if the show's free, they came, right? So their time is what they paid with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you want to leave them with something, right? So I like to usually use written material, and if someone wants to interact while I'm on stage, then hell yeah, we'll go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not like I'm going to be mean, right? There's people who are mean with their crowd work, but it's not my style. But
do you think comedy present day, it's different from what it used to be in the past?
100%, 100%. It is just it's a different terrain. And now, don't get me wrong, I don't mean to say this in a way of where I'm insulting people, but people, there's people out there who lost the sight of what comedy is about. Comedy is about, you're there, you're listening to this person, either delve into their life or their observations or what they're seeing. So everything that they're saying a lot of the times is their opinion, or at least their perception of what's going on. And you can't deny someone their perception because it's what they believe, right? And in comedy today, people find themselves, even myself included, toeing the line. It's like, what should I even bring this up? Right, especially with what's going on now.
Yeah.
So it is a little different. I will say comedy has definitely evolved in other ranges, like with social media, with things like podcasts, people getting content out there a lot easier. So people are being seen a lot easier than it used to be.
You're right, 100%. Yeah, and that's the great thing, the innovation from what technology has brought and how to an individual's career, how they use it and distribute stuff. It could go through the stratosphere. That's the exciting part.
With one video, right? All it takes is one video to get 1 million likes, and all of a sudden now you're viral. Right?
Do you feel that the more you try and make something go viral, it won't go viral, but then something random will just blow up? So
I am actually pretty terrible with social media when it comes to that. Like, I have all these ideas, nothing that I've ever put out, but I want to say you can almost tell, right? When someone's putting out something, it's got some production quality, and they try to do this, and you can tell things are scripted and they're hitting punchlines that they want to hit. But then they'll post something, for example, with stand-up, they'll post something of a set where they just spoke to the couple in the front for like 5 seconds, and now all of a sudden that's got
Yeah.
350K views, and their video that they worked super hard on like got 6K. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's such a difference. It all depends on what people are watching at the time. And honestly, with all the algorithms and stuff going on, because those things are
And they're changing every
wild.
few months. Like you can't
Yeah.
even keep up with it.
Yeah, I did a bunch of research on specifically the Instagram algorithm before TikTok became like
Yeah,
really,
me
really
too.
big. And literally within a few months, they, like you said, they absolutely changed the algorithm. And I'm like, well, literally everything I read over this period of time means nothing now.
Yeah.
And that's, to be honest, the people who are going to move the furthest are the people who are actually keeping up with that kind of stuff. And, you know, kudos to them.
Yeah.
But that kind of,
It's like you're constantly going back to school. Yeah. Because if you want to pay attention and try and get the best results, yeah, you got to be on the ball like nonstop with the platform changes. Yeah.
And it's not even that. Now you have Instagram, you have TikTok, you have Twitter, and people are using all three at once, right? Even going back to Facebook, people are even using and still doing well.
Shout out MySpace. You never know.
Oh, hey, listen, I'll get that top.
I promoted some podcast clips on my LinkedIn. I'm like, fuck it. Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. It's like, you never know. And it's a platform.
All it takes is one person to look at it. Gary Vee talks a lot about that kind of stuff, like content creation, and how one piece of content on one social media is really 4 pieces of content across social media. Right. And it's really just taking those bits. Like, for example, I've seen you do it, right? With the podcast, you make the reel, right? So you have the podcast on YouTube, you make the reel, you cut out small things, you cut out like little clips and snippets of it, right? That's all pieces of content that, you know, people are viewing, right? Whether we know it or not, whether it's, you know, 1 million or 100 people are viewing it, right? It's getting eyes on it. And eventually that grows. It's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, that's today's media, right?
It's the ecosystem of now.
Unfortunately, but yeah.
Because I guess I try to approach it too, how I'd want to look from the outside looking in, because especially if you're not necessarily aware of someone's content or a show or podcast they have, I guess gradually give the small bits of content and the snowball, maybe it'll lead into them diving in, digging deeper, and then they find more content. And maybe they'll dig it, maybe they won't. And then it is what it is.
Yeah. That's pretty much how they work with it. And then, you know, gotta add your hashtags and stuff, all that stuff. And
yeah, I've been trying to figure it. Now I've been trying to use less hashtags on Reels, try to put more. You could put up to 30, but then they say you only put 11 on, I'm just talking about Instagram. Yeah, it's a lot. It's interesting, but it's also sometimes it's exhausting. It's like, I just want to put it out, but then sometimes it'll take me like a half hour to craft a post because you want to try and get the best results because you're working on content. But then also, you got to keep the day moving. You have work, you have life, family. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and you can't necessarily be stuck on your phone the whole time, right? And that's something that I feel
it gives me a headache after a while. Like my eyes are shut. I'm looking at my phone, and I'm like, "Fuck!" You gotta take a break.
But then these people are glued to the phone, and they miss out on what's going on around them. And I say that to some comedians sometimes, especially these people who are mainly on TikTok and stuff like that. I've talked to a few, and I'm like. And in my head, I'm just thinking to myself, but what are you doing with the people around you, right? Because that's where you're going to get your most up-to-date content, what you're doing when you're going out and doing this and that. And I understand some content creators are doing this full-time. It is their job, and I get it. They got to do it 24/7. But still, you know, the best content is going to be when you see it around you, when you're out living. Yeah. And that's kind of the approach I take because, once again, I'm terrible at social media. So that's how I choose to look at it. You know?
Yeah. That's cool. So also recent performances you've had include a Comedy Cove in Jersey, right? That's where the club is, and also you play. I saw it was in Bensalem, Pennsylvania.
That was with the group Comedy on the Crick.
Comedy on the Crick. Yeah. That was cool. Yeah, let's talk about those performances.
You know, it's always a good time wherever you're performing, as long as people are there for comedy. I've noticed, like, obviously, if you're performing in a club or something that is billed strictly as a comedy show, the outcome is typically better. But then you do shows in restaurants, you do shows in bars. And not everyone is necessarily there for that kind of stuff, right? So the people at Crick in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, they had a hall that they rented out, and they would just do a weekly show on Saturdays. And to be honest, for a while, they packed that out. Even when things started opening back up in 2020, the show would pack out. And it was always a fun show, right? And they'd have anywhere between 5 and 10 comics kind of going up there, and a new audience every time. And it was just a good time. The audience ranged anywhere from 60 to 120.
Yeah.
But it was always a good time because, once again, people were there for comedy.
Yeah.
So anywhere, in my opinion, that, everyone is aware that a show is going on, then it's a good time. It's a good show. But there's a lot of people out there trying to produce shows for for a lot of comedians to go on. And to be honest, I appreciate those people because that's how I get booked. I'll even produce a show once or twice a year with Joe. We'll go around and we'll find a venue and we'll do it. But our big thing is we want to make it as much of kind of that comedy club feel without it actually being in a comedy club. You know what I mean? So well, if we do kind of like a dinner show, then usually we like dinner to be before the actual show so people can be engaged, right? Because once you add something else, once you put something else in people's hands, they don't want to pay attention anymore. But those shows out in Pennsylvania were a really, really good time. I had a great time with them, and they stopped for a while because venue issues, but they're great. The two producers out there were great. Cove, I actually only did open mics over there. I actually never performed there.
And that's the venue in New Jersey, right?
Yeah. They're out in Jersey, but there's TIFFs out in Jersey too. I've done a show or two out there with them. Also a great comedy club, also known as the Dojo of Comedy East. They're a fun club over there. Great people. You have Mike over there, he's a great dude.
Yeah, I saw it on your IG. Yeah, the post from the shows that look really cool.
Yeah. Like I said, anytime you're on stage is a good time, hopefully, right? Unless you have like a really bad show, which does happen from time to time. And you never forget those, I can tell you that. But
what's your favorite part about being a comedian?
Making people laugh, right? Like that's literally it. Because to be completely honest, the grind of writing could be a little overwhelming at times. Making sure that you're out there mingling with everyone that you have to mingle with, and kind of that almost feels like the job part of it, right? But when you're up there and people are laughing and getting involved, that's when the fun happens. At least for me, you know what I mean? Yeah. Some people might see it differently, but for me, it's just seeing people laugh and then interacting with that audience after the show. Not necessarily to hear like, "Oh my God, you were great." Like that's not what I want to hear, but I want to hear that you had a good time, even if it's not because of me. But the fact that I could be a part of something that made you have a better day, that to me is the important part, right?
And that's good energy all around. Yeah. That's awesome.
They say laughter is the best medicine. You hear that all the time. Laughter
for sure.
Is the best medicine. And to be completely honest, I don't know if I would say it's the best, but it's definitely great, right? It's definitely better than something prescribed. You know what I mean? So anytime someone could have a better day just from a good laugh, that's, to me, there's nothing better than that. And that's where I was talking about that comedy high, Yeah. It's because like a performing high too. Once you get off stage I felt it from music when I was younger performing shows. It's like, wow, it's exhilarating. Your adrenaline's through the roof. It feels amazing. Yeah. It's like just to make a difference in someone's day. And especially nowadays where everything is like this, everything's kind of closed in. We're locked up still, like a little bit, you know what I mean? Even though things are opening, just getting someone to laugh, because at this point, now things are opening up. It's a little different, but a couple months ago, people coming out to a comedy show, that was their week, right? They went food shopping, they went home, they took care of their kids or whatever. And then Friday night, I'm going to go out to this comedy show. And, you get to just see that week melt off of them, right? Yeah. After having such a rough week with the things that we all have to do in our lives. And then it just melts off of them and they get to enjoy a laugh. They get to have a drink and just have a good time. And that to me that's why I do it, right? Yeah. Or that's why I try to do it.
So let's go back to when you performed at the festival at Gotham Comedy Club. And let's talk about tips and best practices for booking shows as a comedian. So that's awesome how you said that you just reached out, you sent the email or a DM, and it was kind of a shot in the dark, and then you got the message back and they booked you on. So to younger comedians, new comedians, what's your advice for trying to book shows? What would you recommend?
The best thing that I could probably tell them, and to be honest, I don't put myself up on a pedestal by saying anything, because I'm still trying to get booked places, you know what I mean? But I always tell people the more you're on stage, the better it's going to be. So I usually say hang out at the clubs, hang out at the open mics, try to get along with people, mingle with them, because honestly, some of those people are producing shows. It might not be in that comedy club, but they're producing shows, right? So you could get in on their shows, you become friendly with them, maybe even produce your own show, get them on a show, just to kind of, wash each other's hands a little bit, and then understanding how to connect and talk to bookers, right? Those main bookers. A lot of places now will have you do a little bit of an audition process, maybe even with a bringer show and stuff like that. And it's just kind of finding the landscape, and then honestly, try connecting with more experienced comedians. Like I said, I don't even consider myself one of those, right? But connect with more experienced comedians, these veterans who are booked in these clubs, who are regulars, who are performing, and just try to have a conversation with them. I'm not saying harass them, but
Yeah.
talk to them and be willing to have that conversation with them, and eventually, hopefully, someone might vouch for you or might give you an email address where you could say, so and so told me. You could also try sending out availabilities. That's something that I'll do every once in a while. You just send out availabilities to local producers and just see if anyone bites. You know what I mean? A lot of comedians that I talk to, they'll talk to me about how they send their avails out literally once a week to like 100 different places.
Oh, and what is that? So how does it work? When you send availabilities out, you're sending when you're available to perform to different event hosts or producers?
So you'll send them an email and saying like, oh, I'm in your area around this time. You introduce yourself, you say, I heard of you guys through X, Y, and Z, or know you guys through whatever. You maybe give them a short little bio, a little bit of your credits, and then you send headshot and video. A lot of times that's what they want to see. And to be honest, 9 times out of 10, you won't get an answer back unless you were recommended by one of the vets of the club or someone who's been performing at the club regularly. So hanging out in the club is the best thing that I could possibly say to someone. If you have the time to do that, right? I know that obviously it's very difficult for a lot of people, but if you could hang out in the club, then you could sit, you could talk to the people. How'd you get in? How'd you get involved? How'd you start stand up? Just kind of get involved, get friendly with them, and hopefully, you make a friend who doesn't mind vouching for you.
Yeah. Throughout your career as a comedian, what has been your most memorable performance? One that really sticks out?
Man, I would honestly, that show at Gotham, for some reason, I loved every piece of that. The most memorable show. It's a good question. That's a good question.
No, take your time. Yeah.
Let me see.
The Gotham one did sound great. That sounded cool.
My most memorable show, I'm going to say, is the first time Joe and I produced the show at the Looney Bin Comedy Club on Staten Island, when that was an establishment as opposed to a traveling comedy club. And the reason the reason that's the most memorable is because that was the first time that I performed to so many family and friends, right? So we sat there. That room holds about like anywhere from like 80 to 120 or whatever. And we packed out the room. We're trying to get more tables in because there's just a lot of people that we know who always wanted to see us do stand up, but we never necessarily did in Staten Island. We'd be trying to go out and whatever. So we produced this show. And to me, that's the most memorable show because it's just watching all these people who I either grew up with or raised me, or literally everyone, right? Just sitting there watching them, and they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe you can do this. You know what I mean? Because obviously when you start up and stand up, a lot of people are like, that's a crazy idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's something that people say often. So it was nice to just have that experience watching everyone kind of be like, all right, he's not bad, right? It's not great, but he's not bad.
Having a lot of friends and family in the audience.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Because for a while I didn't like having family around during stand-up. And it's not because I was, once again, saying anything gross, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's my family. Why do they want to hear me tell jokes? You know what I mean?
My first few performances when I was in a band in high school, a couple open mics, I felt the same way. I was younger, but I felt weird having relatives or close family there because also I knew it was kind of like a stepping stone. Like, I know I needed work. I don't know, but I felt that too at times. Other times after I did it a few times, like I wanted everyone to come, but I relate to what you just said. Yeah, like my first couple times when I would perform music, I wanted like strangers there instead. I'd rather would have had more strangers than a couple of close family or friends because, I guess when you're just starting out, I was just starting out.
Because there's an approval that needs to happen, right? Like, for example, my parents always...
I wanted to be better for like close friends or relatives, family, if they were coming out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my parents were actually at that show, and that's one of the things where in high school, when I first mentioned to them, I was like, you know what, guys, I want to do stand up, and they were like, yeah, but how about college? Why don't we do that instead? You know what I mean? So them seeing me do that show, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, he can still go to school and but then also still pursue stand up as well, which was that was nice. It was nice.
That's cool.
My parents to finally be like, oh, it was actually you're pretty funny. You know that? Did you know that?
The Looney Bin. So that's a comedy club on Staten Island, or it used to be?
It used to be an establishment on the island that was a comedy club. Now the owner, to my knowledge, does more like traveling shows. It's not in this spot anymore.
Gotcha.
But it was the only comedy club on Staten Island for a while. I know we had an Uncle Vinny's for a while. Then back in the day, there was Grandpa's. And other than that, I don't really know of any other comedy clubs, specifically comedy clubs on the island. But Looney Bin was the one that I've performed at a few times.
Yeah, that's cool. So when it comes to quality versus quantity for a comedian and creating content, do you feel that it's more important to really rehearse and plan out big cinematic pieces of content to post to the socials, let's say once a week? Or do you think it's better to post snippets every day, post every day?
Honestly, I think when it comes down to it, based on what I've seen, not that I'm doing it, even though I should, it's obviously you want quality, but in my opinion, it's consistency. So if you're going to post every day, then you have to be consistent in your content. If you're going to post once a week, it's consistency. Whether or not, like you said, there's these big elaborate things or whatever, it's more about the consistency of how you post, and to be honest, a little bit of what you post, right? Because that's gonna garner your fan base. So it's being consistent with all that. I don't know. To me, I find some people annoying when they post like 50 times a day. So they might get a little bit of an unfollow. But if you're posting consistently every day, then that's great. Just make sure you kind of keep everything up to snuff. You know what I mean? Keep that quality up there, and the quality and consistency. So it's not necessarily I don't look at it as a numbers game, right? But I do look at it as a consistency game, because even if you post once a week, if it's quality content that once a week and you're doing it every week, then you're putting out a great product that you're going to find your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. So you feel as long as the content has value, that could attract more people in?
Yeah. But once again, the consistency. So you look at some of these streamers, right? I don't know if you're into video gaming at all, but there's these like Twitch streamers.
I don't really play anymore, but I know of Twitch streaming, and some people are making great lucrative careers off it. Yeah.
Tons of money, but they have a schedule, and like their fan base knows, okay, they're going to be doing X, Y, and Z on this day, and they can tune in. It's always the same day, same time frame. And it's just that consistency, and eventually it'll grow. Like, for example, this podcast, every Wednesday you post a new episode, right? And eventually that's going to garner the views. That's going to garner the people who want to watch it, right? Because there's consistency. They know, it's Wednesday. Miltrick's putting out his podcast. All right, let me set aside some time. I'll put it on in the background, do something, whatever. Or just, so it is about that consistency and keeping it going. Because a lot of people, before they even get to that level, me included, before you even get to that level of consistency, because you're not garnering the views that you're looking for, you stop, and then you're no longer consistent, and then everything you just did kind of just fades away. Yeah. And that's where that consistency comes down, just sticking with it. And it's like that, not even just for social media, it's like that with everything. Yeah. Right? Stand up, improv, music, just being consistent and just doing it because you like doing it, not because you're shooting for this fame. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and I found that having a routine, it does help. It helps a lot. Staying on track, the consistency matters as well, especially with anything you put out or whatever you're trying to do. Yeah. What are your biggest dreams as a comedian? What are your biggest aspirations? What do you wish to accomplish out of your career?
If we were talking like
the biggest
dream would obviously be something like sell out MSG, right? As far as feasible dreams of what I kind of would like out of stand-up is honestly just do it full time, be able to live my life and do it full time. That to me is ideal. That would make me content. But if we're talking dream big, it would be sell out some massive venue.
Yeah, that could happen. Why not?
I mean, hey, listen.
Do you want to
from your mouth to there?
Right? As a comedian, do you want to hit the road more, or do you love working on material and putting out content more?
I just love being on stage, right? So I don't necessarily consider myself a social media content creator, but wherever I need to go to be on stage, that's kind of where I want to be. That's more of my element.
Being on stage feels more at home. You just love being on stage.
Yeah. So even if that's, even if I have to go do it, 1,000 miles away for a weekend, like, I'll do that. Cause to me, that would be more fun than, making a skit that I could put up online, you know?
Do you still feel nervous before every stand-up performance?
I wouldn't say nervous is the word, as long as I can gauge what's going on. So for me, if I'm there when the show kind of starts or a little bit beforehand, kind of gauge the audience a little bit, gives me a little more confidence to go up there because I can kind of tweak what I need to tweak. But let's just say, if I'm there and an audience is giving nothing to any comic, no matter what. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, this joke is gold. Like, why are they not laughing at that? You know what I mean? Then you might get a little bit of those pre-show jitters, and then you just knock them out. It's definitely not what it used to be, right? Because back in the day when I first started, I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What's going to happen or whatever. Now it's couple minutes, you kind of assess, see what's going on, and then you get up there and you just do your thing. And to be honest, I've completely lost the fear of absolute bombing, as long as it's not on like a massive show, right?
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
So,
yeah. And that comes with performing more.
Yeah, the
more
more
just
you
getting
perform,
used to it, right?
And understanding it's a part of the process, right?
Yeah.
Bombing on stage is 100% a part of the process. There is not one comedian out there who can ever say they didn't bomb. And if they do, they're lying, right? Because everyone's bombed. So it's just being okay with it, learning from it, moving forward, and now getting to your next set and figuring out why did you bomb at that time and how can you just avoid that situation again.
So when it comes to bombing, if that ever happens, do you then ditch the material, or do you try and work on a fresh delivery of the material?
After the show or during the show? Like while you were in the process of bombing?
Once it happens and you reflect.
It depends why, because sometimes, to be completely honest, it is our job as comedians to get the audience engaged. And if you can't do that, that's your main problem. If you can't get your audience to laugh, that's on you. Sometimes, though, it could be on the audience. Maybe something happened the set before that kind of sucked the air out of the room, or something like that, which I've had happen, right? And it's you're just trying to pull the show back together, so your set might not go as great. And there's also different levels of bombing, right? So there's like the complete bombing where it's like nobody laughs, you could hear crickets, you just want someone to like Apollo you off stage and pull you, you know what I mean? And then there's what I didn't do as well as I know I can. Right. That to me, is it bombing? No, but is it great? No, it's not a great feeling either. But it's honestly about taking the material, looking at it and say, was it truly the material? So if I come out with, I have a tier list for my jokes, what I consider like my best jokes, what jokes need to be worked on, and things that haven't even been written yet. If I pull out one of my jokes that I consider good, and I go out there and absolutely no one laughs, I have hundreds of shows before that where even when I was workshopping the joke, where people have laughed and they've laughed hard. So maybe it just wasn't my night. Maybe my performance wasn't that great. Maybe the audience wasn't that into it. But at the end of the day, it's my fault, right? Because it's my job to make them laugh. That's why I am going on stage and they're not. Yeah. So, I'll just relook at the material and say, and they'll just spend a couple minutes and just say, was it the joke or was it me?
That's cool. It's cool to learn the differences between, let's say, performing music and performing comedy, or the possible similarities. It's just cool to learn. It's just cool to learn. Moving forward, what other projects do you have in the works? 2022 moving on. What do you have going on this year? Let us know your plans for the year.
Plans for the year is honestly to get back into, obviously get up on stage more often, as it is every year I say that, but get back a little more into my roots of improv. So I've been kind of working together with a few people, Donnie and Joe, and a couple of other members of my previous improv group, just kind of getting back together and just bringing back improv a little bit, because especially on Staten Island where you don't really, you don't see that, right? There used to be a few groups back in the day who did it. And I remember going in high school, going to watch them perform, and I was like,
there were improv groups on Staten Island?
Yeah, there was one.
Oh, nice. There
was one I specifically remember, Man Crush, and that had Casey Jost, Tim Duffy, people who are now doing some things in the comedy world as well. Now, you know what I mean? They've shot up well above and beyond where I am, but I remember going there in high school every day. It was Martini Red, I believe, at the time. Like, we're talking way back in the day.
Oh, that was the name of the venue back then?
Yeah, and it was right by where Hop Shop is. I don't know if it was it might have been actually the location that Hop Shop's at right now.
Oh, wow.
And in the back, they used to just do, every week, they used to do a long-form improv show. And that was the last time I've seen improv on Staten Island. That's
pretty cool.
That's not a high school group,
it
in school. You know what I mean? So the goal is to kind of get that up and running. Kind of get to the level where we just start taking that show and performing it a little more regularly for people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then, like I said, just getting up on stage, writing more. I have as of right now, no stand-up shows coming up, but there are talks about some things like festivals, club or two who reached out to me. So we will see. So
That's exciting. Yeah, some possible festival appearances or shows in the works. That'd be cool.
yeah. So if people want to know, they could follow me on IG.
Yeah, let us know where can we find you. Let us know all of your social account handles. Where can we find you, Jon?
Pretty much at Jon Elias Comedy.
Spell it out for us.
JONELIAS Comedy. That's Instagram, and then there's Twitter, which I only have 2 tweets on there because I don't use it ever. So really, if you want to know things, it's really going to be on Instagram.
Nice. That's awesome. So anything, last thoughts, anything else you'd like to let us know, promote? What do you want to let the audience know?
Listen, this guy Miltrick's doing a good job here. You know what I mean? You guys got to keep up with this podcast. He's doing a good job out here. He's,
Thank you.
he's helping entertain the world. So definitely reach out to him and, keep supporting. Like and share. Like, share, and comment. The holy trinity of social media, right?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning into another episode of Miltrick Media. Shout out to Jon Elias for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It was a great time.
Yes, and we will see you soon.